Honorable viewers, I welcome all of you to my YouTube channel, Department of English. Today, I would like to share with you the Iliad written by Homer. So let's get started. You know that this is a epic. So let's start. Introduction. Who wrote the Iliad? The Iliad is an epic poem by the ancient Greek poet Homer, which recounts some of the significant events of the final weeks of the Trojan War and the Greek siege of the city of Troy, which was also known as Ilion, Ilios, or Ilium in ancient times. Written in the mid or 18th century BC, the Iliad is usually considered to be the earliest work in the whole Western literary tradition and one of the best known and loved stories of all time. Through its portrayal of the epic subject matter of the Trojan War, the starting scenes of bloody battle, the worth of Achilles, and the constant interventions of the gods. It explores themes of glory, worth, homecoming, and fate, and has provided subjects and stories for many other later Greek, Roman, and Renaissance writings. Synopsis. Iliad summary. The story covered by the Iliad begins nearly 10 years into the siege of Troy by the Greek forces led by Agamemnon, king of Mycenae. The Greeks are quarreling about whether or not to return Ceres, a Trojan's captive of King Agamemnon, to her father. Further crisis a priest of Apollo. When Agamemnon refused and threatens to ransom the girl to her father, the offended Apollo plagues them with pestilence. The Greeks, at the behest of the warrior hero Achilles, force Agamemnon to return Chryses and order to appease Apollo and end the pestilence. But when Agamemnon eventually reluctantly agrees to give her back, he takes in her stead breasts Achilles' own prize, concubine. Feeling dishonored, Achilles rightfully withdraws both himself and his Myrmidon warriors from the Trojan horse. Testing the resolve of the Greeks, Agamemnon brings a homeward order, but Odysseus encourages the Greeks to pursue the fight. During a brief truce in the hostilities, Paris and Menelaus meet in single combat over Helen, while she and old King Priam of Troy was from the city walls, and despite the goddess Aphrodite's intervention on behalf of the overmatched Paris, Menelaus is the victor. The goddess Athena, however, who favors the Greeks, soon provokes a Trojan truce, breaking and battle begins anew. The Greek hero Diomedes, strengthened by Athena, drives the Trojans before him, but in his arrogance and bloodlust strikes and injures Aphrodite, despite the misgivings of his wife. And romance, the Trojans hero Hector, son of King Priam, challenges the Greek warrior hero Ajax to single combat and is almost overcome in battle. Throughout all, in the background, the various gods and goddesses, particularly Hera, Athena, Apollo, and Poseidon, continue to argue among themselves and to manipulate and intervene in the struggle, despite Zeus' specific orders to the country. Achilles steadfastly refuses to give in to place for help from Agamemnon, Odysseus, Ajax, Phoenix, and Nestor, spurning the offered warners and Rhesus, and even Agamemnon's belated offer to return braces to him. Diomedes and Odysseus sneak into the Trojan camp and wreak havoc. But with Achilles and his warriors out of battle, the tide appears to begin to turn in favor of the Trojans. Agamemnon is wounded in the battle, and despite the heroics of Ajax, Hector successfully braces the fortified Greek camp, wounding Odysseus and Diomedes in the process, and threatens to set the Greek ships on fire. Torn between his allegiances, Achilles orders his friend and lover, Patroclus, to dress in Achilles' own armor and to lead the Myrmidons in repelling the Trojans. Intoxicated by his success, Patroclus forgets Achilles' warning and pursues the fleeing Trojans to the walls of Troy, and would have taken the city were it not for the actions of Apollo. In the heat of the battle, though, Hector finds the disguised Patroclus, and thinking him to be Achilles, fights, and again with Apollo's help kills him. Menelaus and the Greeks manage to recover Patroclus' corpse before Hector can inflict more damage. Distraught at the death of his companion, Achilles then reconciles with Agamemnon and rejoins the fray, despite knowing his deadly fate, and drives all the Trojans before him in his fury. As the 10-year war reaches its climax, even the gods join the battle, and the earth shakes with the clamor of the combat. Clad in new armor fashioned especially for him by Hephaestus, Achilles takes revenge for his parent Patroclus by slaying Hector in single combat, but then defiles and desecrates his corpse for several days. Now, at least, Patroclus' funeral can be celebrated in what Achilles sees as a fitting manner. Hector's father, King Priam, emboldened by his grief and aided by Hermes, recovers Hector's corpse from Achilles, and the Iliad ends with Hector's funeral during a 12-day truce granted by Achilles. Now I'd like to share with you analysis. Although attributed to Homer, the Iliad is clearly dependent on the older oral tradition and may well have been the collective inheritance of many singer poets over a long period of time. That means the historical fall of Troy is usually dated to around the start of the 12th century BCE, before Christian era. Homer was probably one of the first generation of authors who were also literate, as the Greek alphabet was introduced in the early 18th century before Christian era, that's in BC, and the language used in his epic poems is an archaic version of Ionic Greek, with admixtures from certain other dialects such as Aeolic Greek. However, it is by no means certain that Homer himself, if in fact such a man ever really existed, actually wrote down the verses. The Iliad was part of a group of ancient poems known as the epic cycle, most of which are now lost to us, which dealt with the story of the Trojans and the events surrounding it. Whether or not they were written down, we do know that Homer's poems, along with others in the epic cycle, were recited in later days at festivals and ceremonial occasions by profession singers called rhapsodes who beat out measures with rhyme steps. The Iliad itself does not cover the early events of the Trojan War, which had been launched 10 years before the events described in the poem in order to rescue Helen, the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta, after her abduction by the Trojan prince Paris. Likewise, the death of Achilles and the eventual fall of Troy are not covered in the poem, and these matters are the subjects of other, that means non-Homeric epic cycle poems which survive only in fragments. The Odyssey, a separate work also by Homer, narrates Odysseus' decade-long journey home to Ithaca after the end of the Trojan War. The poem consists of 24 scrolls containing 15,693 lines of dactylic hexameter verse. The entire poem has a formal rhythm that is consistent throughout, making it easier to memorize and yet varied slightly from line to line, preventing it from being monotonous. Many prayers, sometimes whole passages, are repeated verbatim over and over again throughout the Iliad, partly to fulfill the demands of the matter and partly as part of the formulaic oral tradition. In the same way, many of the descriptive phrases that are linked with a certain character, such as swift-footed Achilles, Diomedes of the great war cry, Hector of the shining helm, and Agamemnon the lord of the men, match the number of syllables in a hero's name, and are repeated regularly to the extent that they almost seem to become part of the characters' names themselves. The immortal gods and goddesses are portrayed as characters in the Iliad, displaying individually and within their actions, but they are also stock religious figures, sometimes allegorical, sometimes psychological, and their relation to humans is extremely complex. They are often used as a way of explaining how or why an event took place, but they are also sometimes used as comic relief from the war, mimicking, parodying, and mocking mortals. Indeed, it is often the gods and the mortals who seem casual, petty, and small-minded. The main theme of the poem is that of war and peace, and the whole poem is essentially a description of war and fighting. There is a sense of horror and futility built into horror's chronicle, and yet posed against the busyness there is a sense of heroism and glory that adds a glamour to the fighting. Homer appears both to abhor war and to glorify it. Frequent similes tell of the peacetime efforts back home in Greece and serve as contrast to the war, reminding us of the human values that are destroyed by fighting as well as what is worth fighting for. The concept the concept of heroism and the one that results from it also one of the major currents running through the poem. Achilles in particular represents the heroic code, and his struggle revolves around his belief in an honor system, as opposed to Agamemnon's reliance on royal privilege. But as a fighter, after a heroic fighter enters the fray in search of honor and is slain before our eyes, the question always remains as to whether their struggle, heroic or not, is really worth the sacrifice. Menin or menis is the word that opens the Iliad, and one of the major themes of the poem is Achilles coming to terms with his anger and taking responsibility for his actions and emotions. So that's all about Homer Iliad. For the timing, thanks for your patience hearing. Bye bye.